You're going to have to start over, and it's going to feel like death. And when I say start over, I mean at some point in your life, you're going to have to start a completely different career or start over in your marriage or in your friend group or in a different city, or maybe all of those things at once. Every single adult I know has had to start over at least once in their life. I've had to do it 3 times. This is something they don't teach you in school, or at least I don't remember them teaching me this in school, that the number one skill you can have in this modern society, in this economy, is the ability to start over, to learn new skills, but most importantly, to deal with that mourning period that comes when you realize that the life as you knew it has died. It's the ability to pick up and move on. In general, I kind of hate giving career or life advice because, let's be frank, I don't have a real job. But it's true that there is some tiny sliver of my audience out there who has been following me for the last 25 years and has followed me through all of these various periods of starting over. So I'm going to very quickly tell my story because I think it might help some of you. So the context is that some of you out there are realizing just now that AI is about to wipe out your job, that the thing you spent the last several years learning how to do, that AI either now or in the future is going to be able to do it faster and cheaper. Okay, so for context, I graduated high school in 1993. When I went to college, for most of that time, the internet didn't exist. Cell phones didn't exist. I mean, they existed out in the world somewhere, but they were not a thing in everyday life. I did not hold a cell phone in my hand until 1995. I did not see a website on a computer until 1996. So I went to college for broadcast journalism with the idea of maybe working in radio or maybe writing for a magazine someday. But just to set the scene, when we learned to edit audio, we were learning by taking the physical tape and cutting it with a razor blade and then taping it together. It was still being done physically. That's how long ago this was, and that's how much things were about to change. Because even if you don't want to listen to the rest of my boring story, already you should grasp that when I was in college, the job that would make my career did not exist yet. There were no blogs, there were no websites, there were no podcasts, there were no smartphones, there were no social media platforms. All of the stuff that I'm doing now to make money, all of my income is off of things that did not exist when I was in college. And that is true for a whole bunch of the people watching this. Your job, the thing that is going to be your dream job, just doesn't exist yet. So I made my way through college. I actually got a job in broadcast journalism before I even graduated. It was a job as a morning news producer at an ABC affiliate in Illinois. So I was doing that from 1997 to 1998 as I watched the internet come like a tidal wave and just obliterate everything I knew. It was changing everything about how that job worked. It changed everything about the career paths. I could talk for the rest of the week about all of that, but what matters is that in 1999, I realized this career wasn't going anywhere for me. So at age 24, I had to start over for the first time. I started a blog, the thing that would eventually become my career, but at the time, that was not a career that you could have. It was something I was doing as a hobby because that thing I'd wanted to do with maybe writing for a magazine someday, all of those jobs were disappearing rapidly. It was the exact same thing you're seeing with AI now, where entire categories of jobs just suddenly are not being posted anymore. So here I am with $75,000 in student loans that I thought I had just wasted. So I turn around and borrow more money to try to train myself in the technical side of the internet. I tried to get certifications in networking and various types of programming. I tried to learn databases. So to make money, I was just applying to everywhere I could find. I was applying for jobs at the mall. I applied for a job at a UPS warehouse, just any place that had openings, and none of them took me. So in my mid-20s, I finally went to a temp agency and got a job doing data entry in the evenings. And then during the day, I got a second job doing data entry at a law office. And again, these jobs were in no way creative. Nobody thought I had any kind of creative talent at all whatsoever. I was basically blogging on the side as a hobby while working 2 office jobs. At some point in the middle of all of that, I realized that I did not have the aptitude for any of the technical stuff I was trying to do. I couldn't code. I wasn't good with hardware. So all of that money that I had borrowed to take those classes also had been wasted. And where I had convinced myself that I had successfully started over, I am retraining myself for the future because the internet is the future. When I started failing those tests and realizing I wasn't going to be able to do the more advanced ones, I realized that I was going to have to start over again. I spent the next several years pouring my energy into the writing thing, into this website that I had. I was working on this late into the night. Every night I was working on it. Every weekend I was pouring hundreds of dollars of money out of my own pocket into the various operating costs because it was becoming popular. I had written some viral articles, but it was not paying me anything. There was no economy for doing that at the time. This is after the dot-com crash. If you're too young to know what that is, Google it. But basically, a lot of the early investor money that had poured into the internet evaporated in the early 2000s. That period was where I saw a lot of my peers have to start over because some of them had been very fortunate and had gotten jobs working on the internet. And tons of those jobs just went away overnight. Once more, I could spend weeks talking about all of the ups and downs of this period and all of the things that changed in the industry and how the different ad models kept collapsing. But what matters is that finally in 2007, at age 32, I got my first full-time writing work. Two things actually happened at the same time. In the course of my blog, I had written a story called John Dies at the End that became a novel, and I actually sold the film rights to that before it even had a mainstream publishing deal. I then got contacted about doing a full-time job for a new startup called Crack.com. Because they needed an assistant editor that had some experience writing online. So each of these times I had started over, it had taken me about 4 years to get to the next stage where I would have to start over again. But then after I landed at Cracked, that took off. Some of you who know who I am, this is how you know me. It's when I was writing at Cracked under the pseudonym David Wong. That operation would explode. At the height of its success in, I think, probably 2014, 2015, I think they had 25 million unique users showing up every month. In 2016, the site would be sold to another company for almost $40 million. And no, I didn't get any of that money. I did not own the site. I just worked there. Then, in the middle of 2017, the industry would collapse. Once again, I could spend the rest of the week talking about all of the ins and outs of why it happened. But it's very boring if you're not in the industry. Let's just say that there's a reason why none of those comedy websites that a lot of you were reading in the mid-2000s are around anymore. Because it wasn't just Crack that got hit, it was College Humor and Funny or Die and BuzzFeed. At the end of 2017, they would lay off almost the entire staff and close down the office. I was kept on board with a skeleton crew to basically keep the site limping along until they could sell it to some other company. In early 2020, I would finally leave after they let me know that basically my job was going to be eliminated one way or the other, and I had to start over for the third time. This time at age 45. I had made the decision that I was going to focus full-time on being a novelist. This was in March of 2020. And if you remember March of 2020, you realize why this is hilarious. The pandemic would hit. My next novel came out in the fall of 2020, during a period when all of the bookstores were closed, because there was another pandemic lockdown due to a fall wave. It was my worst-selling book by far. See, here's the thing. I had convinced myself that this time I wasn't really starting over because I was already a published novelist. If anything, I was cutting back. I was just taking the job I was already doing on the side and just focusing entirely on it. I wasn't having to retrain myself in any way. I had been writing books since 2007. If anything, it was a form of retirement. Instead, I spent that entire next year figuring out what I needed to do because the industry was changing under my feet. Again, if you went to a bookstore at that time, you saw exactly how it was changing because there were entire shelves about something called Book Talk. As in, these are the books that are popular on TikTok, and the publisher only wants books that are popular on TikTok or on Instagram. This is how the next generation of readers are finding out what they want to read. This was a problem because some of you have been longtime fans know that not only did I not do video, I didn't used to do photos. I wrote anonymously under a pseudonym for most of the first decade I was writing. And when John Dies at the End came out in hardcover, yes, it had my real name in the About the Author section on the flap, but it did not have my picture. I did not want my photo on it. When we started doing a podcast, it cracked. I hated the idea and I resisted being on the show for a long time because I hated the sound of my own voice and I was not a performer. I was a writer. When I went to college for broadcast journalism, I did it to do behind the camera work as a producer. That is the guy who writes the news stories, the guy who edits the video, does all of that stuff. I think it was like my third or fourth novel before I reluctantly gave them an author photo they could put on the flap. I did not want my face out there. I did not like having my voice out there, and I definitely did not like having to perform in front of a camera. I never did video stuff. You'll see on my channel, I did some videos a long time ago because I was told you had to have some kind of a video presence. So I reluctantly turned on a camera and did something for YouTube that not very many people watched. And it was difficult and I hated it and I hated watching it. But this is why I'm telling the story, because at this point I recognize that this is what it looks like. You can hate changes to your industry all you want. Nobody cares. It's true that if you're in a rare position in your industry, like if you have a rare, unique talent, then maybe you don't have to do the stuff that everybody else has to do. As an author, for example, I was not one of those people. I either had to adapt or die. So in the summer of 2022, I downloaded TikTok, an app that I thought was just for like teenage girls to do 15-second dances while they lip sync to a song. But I did what I always do, what I had learned to do, which is just I threw myself into it and just watched it for hour after hour, day after day, understanding how it worked and what people wanted out of it. So I joined not to become an influencer or to try to make money off of it, because at the time that wasn't a thing, but purely to try to connect to other people on there who were doing like book reviews and stuff. Because I thought, well, if they know my face, if they've seen my videos, that may make them curious enough to want to review my books. So I started making videos for the first time in my life. I was making up to 4 videos a day. I made hundreds of them, like just rapidly trying to soak up all of the lessons to try to learn as fast as possible what makes for a good video. What do people want out of me? What to do with my face when I'm talking. I'm not like these kids who grew up with cameras on their phones recording themselves all the time. We didn't even have a video camera in our house. That was just about 3 years ago as I record this video. And at this point, about 60% of my income is from making these stupid little videos. I have 1.3 million followers across TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and the various Twitter clones. I am paying my mortgage doing a job that literally did not exist when I was in college. The technology to produce the videos and to consume the videos did not exist when I was in college. And here's the punchline. If it was up to me, I would have frozen the system in place back when it was blogs. My favorite thing is still just to write long text articles, to be able to really dig into an idea. I feel like that's the skill I was born with. But the audience isn't there anymore. I watched them drift away when I was at Crack. The people that used to sit down and read a 4,000 or 5,000 word article on a subject, now they want to listen to it in a podcast or watch a YouTube video essay about it. But I can't get too angry at the audience because I'm the same way. And this is the final lesson I would like to convey to you, because you can rage about the fact that AI is taking away your job, but you also are going to wind up using AI. It's already here. We lost that argument. I realize that my example is a somewhat frivolous example. You're not all going to become freaking TikTok influencers, and thank God. No matter what career you're in, some version of that exists in the future where a bunch of jobs are going to get eliminated, but it opens up the possibility of doing a whole bunch of things that you never even thought of. Things that will benefit people. And some of you watching this, especially if you're a younger person, your career, the ideal job for you is something that does not exist yet, but will very soon. But to get from where you are now to there feels like death. Don't let me downplay how difficult this is, because it is not just a matter of racking up a bunch of education debt or having to do a whole bunch of work on the side, often unpaid. It's not just a matter of possibly having to change cities, having to say goodbye to your friends and family. It's the loss of your previous identity, because if you really loved your previous work and if you really had it tied into your self-worth, if you woke up every day thinking, I am a cool person because I'm really good at doing this, seeing a machine do that work better than you could is not easy. I keep describing it as a kind of death because it is. There's a mourning period where you have to process the loss of it and say, not just what type of work am I going to be doing in the future, but who am I going to be? Unless you are one of the very rare exceptions, you will have to do some version of this. If you have already had to do it, say so in the comments. Tell your story. Because those of you who have not had to do it yet, and those of you who are starting to suspect that you're going to have to, or maybe that you should have done it already and that you're overdue, the one thing you need to know is that it can be done. People do it every day. And we're never going to go back to a world where you just get a job and then that's what you do for the next 50 years and then you retire. It's not going to happen. I've started over 3 times in my life, and guess what? I'm going to have to do it again at some point.